promoted mostly by the mobile industry. Because the mobile industry think that we have a strange division of who gets what's in the frequencies based on traditional policies, where in the old days where you had analog radio and television, to get that nationally you need a lot of frequencies. Now we have digital radio, we have digital, or getting digital television. We are freeing a lot of frequencies. So what should they be used for? Now you have globally a big fight. And how do you get that right? I mean, one way is like the mobile industry to say, okay, economic efficiency shows that much more should be given to the mobile industry because that's where the money is. But of course, there's still a national cultural issue related to that. So in Denmark also, we are struggling with this. We are having these two things, but more and more is being given in to the mobile industry. What we're saying is, okay, we need to keep a certain amount of frequencies for television, for digital television, but we need only to keep as much for television as we can actually accommodate internationally. Because the digital television don't take up that much space. I mean, you can easily, within the frequencies allocated for analog television, you can have like 60, 70, maybe 80 channels. Most countries, small countries like Denmark and Ghana, cannot develop efficiently more than that. Even less, I would say.
The reason I asked that question is your last point.
Yeah.
The organizational aspects of regulation must be adapted to the changing technology.
Yeah.
And market development. Right now, if you are in Wali somewhere in Northern region, you cannot pick up Joy FM. But who knows, maybe in 3 years' time with satellite broadcasting like they have in the US and Cyrus and some of these things in Ghana, the Chinese might be making the set so cheap and things of that sort. People start picking Joy FM over there because now they are doing satellite broadcasting. So where does the policy issue deal with that? Recently, one of the companies which was bidding to buy Westall was looking at doing complete a complete mobile system over the WiMAX that they wanted to roll out in Accra. And they were going to bypass the standard mobile infrastructure that had been put in by these other current operators. And using the voice over IP technology, they thought they could roll out the mobile stuff. And I believe recently, either in Denmark or Finland, they have come up with this mobile thing that it uses people's handsets to transmit along. So that, for example, you can call a friend at Lagos without going through the network of MTN or Casapac. As long as there are other handsets which are within a certain radius, it just keeps talking and going along, and you can call your friend who's at Lagos, and especially for campus at Lagos, you will virtually call every student at Lagos without going through your network. And so going back to your last point on policy, how does policy adapt and how are we doing in Ghana with regards to some of these trends? Because otherwise you'll be sitting up your policy and technology will change the whole landscape and you'll be scrambling to modify your policy and things have changed.
Exactly. Yeah, my long introduction was also leading to something like that because also now I mean this technology, you're right, technological wise it's possible, perfectly possible to use this the terminals as relays, but still I mean there are some issues related to that, so actually nobody has introduced it as more than a trial. But for instance, we're also now developing mobile TV, and that's not much more than a trial. That's a new platform coming up. So you are showing mobile TV not as a streaming issue, but as a mobile mass communication taking down on your terminal. So what is this? Is this mass media or is it mobile? I mean, there you have the real convergence, and you cannot distinguish between them. You have television, you have a mobile thing. So what this comes down to, I think, is that you have to, instead of doing in the old, like we did in the old days in this regulation, you simply have to adjust to the new technologies, not to regulate the individual technologies, but to regulate issues you want to have. I mean, you have to say, okay, in this country, we want to have mass communication, and we want to make sure that we have a certain frequency open for national-based mass communication. And then the market can take care of whatever and should be able to actually offer things. Like if somebody wants to introduce satellite-based communication to transmit FM radio, I think, my mind is that they should be allowed to, if they don't interfere with our basic provisions of national-based radio, then I think we have to say what is actually our priorities here. We have priority for national-based mass communication out of political and cultural things. We have a priority saying we have to make sure that we are able to cover the country with mobile communication and have to make resources available for that. Then comes a different issue, of course, how much and how do we balance between them. But we have to, I think we have to take the point of departure, even if it's more difficult, on what would we actually like to have. And then we should make sure that this is possible. And then we should make it possible for the technology and for the market to develop, to offer services where the economic basis is. I mean, I think this is the overall guideline. And then I know when you go down to the specifics, then it becomes difficult because you have all kinds of interest and so on and so forth. But still, I think we have to take this different point of departure, not starting with the technology, but starting with the services we want to be available, give priority, and then let the rest play out their role on the market as with other commodities.
Thank you. Can you introduce yourself, please?
I'm the Minister of Finance. You made something about the technological trend, like how the basic, the application, and then the third one being the third wave.
Yeah.
From your experience and your research from Ghana and Africa, where do you place Ghana? Which waves? Are we first, second, or third?
I think it's important again to say that you are part, like any other country, you are part of international development. So you are, no matter whether you want it or not. I mean, you have all three developments here. But then you can say, how much are we participating in the different ones? Well, for the first one, it's very much a matter of actually introducing digital technology, basic technologies. And there, I would say there's been a very, very fast development in Ghana. I mean, you have very common access to the internet. You're using digital communication, you have digital radio, and so on. For the second one also, you're quite good. I mean, you have several software companies developing national-based activities like the soft drive or whatever, you're looking at different companies here. And then when it comes to the third one, but there I say you have some developments. But there, I mean, there you are lacking somewhat behind the most developed countries. I mean, your public sector, for instance, there could be a lot of reasons for that. I'm not saying it's better or worse or whatever. There could be a lot of reasons for it. But if you look into your public sector, the number of services you offer to the public online, for instance, is more limited here than we do in many countries. I mean, for a lot of things like medical assistance, like tax, like education, things like that, you can approach that more. There are much more choices. There are much more offerings in developed countries. There are some reasons for that. Also, when you go to the private sector, you have some offerings here, but if you go, for instance, it's changing very fast. I mean, now you can book hotels, for instance, online, also in Ghana. 2 years ago, I think there was one, as I remember, there were 1 or 2. The other ones just has ads on the internet and you can phone them. Now you can actually book also. Also, you have a lot of other companies offering their services on the net where you can buy things and things like that. So you are developing, but still a lot of things. And I think, seen from the policy and regulatory point of view, I mean, the public sector has a key role here because the public sector can use this new technology, in my mind, is both to make cheaper and more efficient of it. I mean, we have this very strange situation. In the old days, rationalization usually meant that the service was getting bad. I mean, if you saved on it, it was to a certain extent at least, it was different service. But here, you can actually very often offer a better service because you can get round-the-clock advice from the public sector. You can approach the public sector. You can get, I mean, they order driver's license, for instance. I mean, you don't have to queue up with these things. So you can really, and the public sector there, I think, has a very crucial role because they can actually save money at the same time make sure that these services spread into society, both in the sense that the private sector see what you can actually do, and in the sense that you build up competences. Because if you order from a Ghanaian company some services for the public sector, then the deliverer of that, he will get competence actually and can offer that more broadly. So I think the public sector has a key role, and there I think we can still, I mean, there's room for improvement, I think.
Well, actually, talking about this, I think one of the most dramatic presentations Professor Skouby and myself made was to the 1998 Pompo Conference, Communication Policy Conference, where we had a very big drama with the lights for a projector. But more seriously, I was looking at that presentation recently. And essentially the point that we were making in that presentation is that even at that time, in terms of access to government information, we needed to pay much more attention to content. And our feeling at that time was that the government's IT effort was too much focused on technology and not sufficiently on information. Now, when I read that proposal recently, that presentation recently, and looking at our present situation, I think a lot is changing. There is something really fantastic. I thought I tried to keep track of what is happening in ICT, but I was absolutely bowled over by the Bank of Ghana's East-Reach presentation. The Bank of Ghana has devised a new term whereby with a card and using thumbprint reading technology for the Skouby, you can go into any bank, like I'm with Barclays, I can go into SSB and get money. I can go into several shops, and that, I mean, it's absolutely something that has really pleasantly surprised me. I'm sure Dr. Somwa will talk about several things they are doing in the e-Ghana project, where these things are going to change quite a bit. I'll take one less technical question, and I'll ask Ms. Ayariga to make a presentation. Shall we? Why don't I, Professor Skouby? I mean, I must have, this is a very unfair question because I was explaining our top tax to you only yesterday. But from the little that you know about it, what do you think about it?
Sorry,
about a top tax in Ghana, the proposal to tax airtime in Ghana.
Yeah. I mean, this is again, this is of course a complicated.
Go on.
Complicated issue because I mean there's a lot of different interests involved here. I mean there's of course state budgets thing, and to my mind, I think it's I would start out saying to my mind I think it's a bad idea, and the reason I think it's a bad idea is that I think that taxation should be used. I mean, there are two ways of actually doing taxation, and one is you like to raise money or you like to discourage a certain behavior. I mean, that's why most countries tax alcohol, tax tobacco, because the public opinion thinks that it's bad for you, and as many people cannot really see that, then we have to help them and make these commodities more expensive. Then there's of course the issue of taxing for getting state budget revenue. And there again, I think that the most obvious thing and what you do in most countries is that you tax the income, people's income, you tax the general use of the market as VAT. But if you're going into to tax specific things because they are very popular, I think again it's because you would like to discourage the use of these specific services. And as I have strongly argued here, I think that mobile communication is an essential basis of the future society, not least in Africa. I think it's globally, but it's very important in Africa and in developing countries for a lot of reasons. You all know that lack of physical infrastructure. And as the technology develops, you can deliver almost anything, and in a few years you can deliver in virtually anything over mobile or wireless. So for this reason, very generally, there could be specific reasons I'm not aware of here in the specific Ghanaian situation, but I would say that out of general considerations like this, I think it's a bad idea to tax an activity which is seen and recognized as future-oriented, essential for the development of society. So unless there's a very, very good reason for liking to restrain momentarily the development of mobile communication in Ghana, I think it's not a good idea.
Well, I'd like to respond to that. We pay, I think it's called a pro rata tax on petroleum, where for every gallon of petrol we buy, 40 or 50% of it is tax. In Europe, it's worse. I don't know if it's because the governments in Europe want to discourage you from using your vehicle, or whether your purchasing of petroleum to do whatever you're doing is seen by the government as something they need to discourage you from. I think what we all acknowledge is it's good with inelastic demand, I believe it is. So that no matter how much the price goes up, there's a certain amount of use that cannot be avoided. In our context, I think the mobile is one of those services with inelastic demand. Two, we know how to measure it. Unfortunately, people like you have done good enough work for the government to know exactly how much is being consumed, and also to know that we can't avoid consuming this much mobile service. And so, everyone's talked about low-hanging fruit there. I would rather the government take, rather than come and raise the fuel tax or come and try and collect income tax from me. So, this is a personal opinion. I'm not speaking for.
No. Yeah. Here at Chatham House rules. In other words, you're also putting your personal capacity.
Yeah, I'd like to establish that great idea, wrong name.
Okay.
Government needs the revenue, we all acknowledge. And we should get some revenue for technological development like this thing. Call it any other times. We have the tourism levy in South Africa and other countries. Call it a technology levy. We've had even the surcharges charges on the banks. But why talk that? Because it is totally inimical to the ordinary person.
Can I just jump in here?
Yeah.
The official name is not top. Top tax has been concocted, as far as I know, by the journalistic fraternity. But the real name, initially, was specific excise on airtime. Okay, but now the idea is to call it now, I think the formulation now has assumed the name Communication Services Tax.
And then, yes, it makes a lot of sense.
You see, there were a lot of misunderstanding resulting from the way the policy was announced.
Yeah.
A lot of work did not go into the analysis of the policy before it was announced. So that opened the gates for various interpretations to come even from policymakers themselves. because each picked the matter from different angles, and therefore the public was fed with so much information which did not reflect the true situation. But what we are now getting at Ministry of Finance, after consulting with the players, we are converging on the idea that it's no longer going to be called excise tax, and therefore it's not a sin tax. You know, the moment you make an excise tax, then you're talking about a sin tax. It's not supposed to be a sin tax. It's not supposed to discourage. It's rather to give money government a little bite of the user charges that the communication players are making. So it's going to be a split burden on both the consumer and the service providers. It's not going to be loaded on the consumer completely. So that's where we are getting at.
I absolutely appreciate that government has to get revenue, like I also said. But for you, I mean, just this petrol tax, it is actually introduced to discourage use of petrol. That's the whole purpose of it. That the race, I mean, we have always had some tax on it, but it was introduced, the big one was introduced after this so-called energy crisis. So it's introduced out of two reasons. One is the pollution, and the other one is some maintenance activities. So it is to discourage use. And then again, you're right, of course, see, if you are going to tax things, then you should tax things with an elastic demand. You're right there. But of course you do hit people. I mean, it's not that it will not influence the demand. It will just influence the demand less, because, I mean, there's almost no demand that's completely inelastic. It's inelastic because you will not have a big effect. Also, if you have a modest tax, you will not have a big effect. But still, what I'm saying is that the government's budget could be an overriding issue to all these considerations. But I think from the purely theoretic thing, without knowing enough details of the Ghanaian budget situation, I will still